Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show. The show is designed to give you solutions to your day-to-day management and leadership problems. It's hosted by Matthew Haddock, a frontline manager and leader with over 25 years of experience. If you're ready, then let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Manager Matt podcast show, a weekly podcast designed to help you as a manager and leader unlock your potential both inside and outside of work, with the ultimate aim of delivering the results you need. Please subscribe to the show if you haven't already so you'll never miss an episode, and share it with others who you think might benefit. Right, without any more delay, let's get on with this week's show. Welcome to this week's show. So, this week I want to talk around how to execute the plan, or your plan. Because of course, as a manager and a leader, you will have a plan. Whatever that may seem to be in your business, but you will have a plan. It might be a daily plan, might be weekly, might be monthly, might be yearly, might be 3 yearly, might be even 5 yearly. Wow, imagine that. But it's important to have a plan, and in fact, very important to have a plan as a manager and leader, because these are the things that may ensure that you can execute the real purpose of you being there. Without a plan, you're literally drifting from day to day. And it's easy just to drift, just to see how it goes day to day and let it sort of ride. But that's not how leadership and management works. And of course, it sounds easy to think to yourself, well, I know I'm going to execute a plan. But actually, the concept is easy, the talk is easy, but the real hard part of this is to apply it. You need to think that every time you want to execute a plan, that you've gone through a set of really sort of rigorous rules and regs to make it easy for you to do. You know, you must make sure that you've got a plan that can be executed and can be communicated to your team. So I think in today's show, I want to go through some of the specific behaviours that will help boost you both personally and as a team to execute your plan. And obviously, to do that, there's going to be some points. I think you'll realise by now there's always a list of points when I kind of go through this. So let me go through what I would say is the 3 biggest behaviours that will boost your personal and team execution of the plan that you need to do. Now, firstly, is sharpen your focus. Secondly, is build the competency. And thirdly, is to ignite the passion. So, the best place to start with these is obviously number 1. So, focus. So, what do I mean by sharpening your focus? Well, the big important thing of a plan is, what are you actually aiming to do? What goal are you trying to hit? And what will you get the best return from that goal? Because, of course, the effort you're going to put in as a team or personally needs to be focused on the biggest outcome that you can get. So by sharpening that focus, it means that you can execute whatever the business's real strategy is. And of course, to do that, you need to have a way of breaking that sharpness down. So, what do you need to do to execute your strategy? Well, first thing you need to do inside this sharpen your focus is to keep it simple. Think of 3s to simplify the strategy. It might be metrics, it might be actions, but if you can try to apply the fact that you need to keep it simple, you look at 80-20. 80% of what you're going to get in benefit is probably from 20% of the real actual target you're trying to do. So when you're looking at keeping a sharp focus and going after the strategy, it's try to keep it simple. Then, of course, inside that, you need to identify your one thing. So what I've met in many years of management is lots of great leaders and very good people. But unfortunately, what they've tried to do is a scattergun approach. They've tried to hit everything. And by trying to hit everything, they usually fail and miss most of them. The idea of the scattergun is you're throwing out a massive wide range, and of course something's going to land. But of course that's not the best. You need to boil it down. You need to identify in some regards what is the one thing or the one activity that will mostly affect you hitting your plan. You've got to align that one thing to the organisation, obviously, but you need to make sure your team knows what is the most valuable thing we can do right now to sharpen that focus and to deliver and execute the plan. And then you need to know when to say no. And I think I've done a cast in the past. In fact, I have done a cast in the past around saying no. And it's important that you give yourself filters and hurdles to whatever comes along. So if you have focused and you know what you're going to be doing and you've sharpened it, what the last thing you want to do is be knocked off track by something new arriving. So you need to have the ability to say, right, no to that activity or task or report or meeting or project or whatever it is, but actually say, I'm going to do the exact same. I'm going to make sure that I'm doing the things that needs to be done. Because what will happen is in your weeks or your months is because you start saying yes to everything else, you'll start to lose the focus, and your sharpening the focus won't be there, therefore you can't do it. And there's a really straightforward thing to do, and they call it the 4 Ds. And you look at it and you go, do I do it? Do I delegate it? Do I defer it? Or do I dump it? And you've got to use those 4 Ds inside this idea, because if you don't, if you're getting something coming in your funnel every day and all of a sudden you and your team, because obviously this applies to your team, will lose focus. And when you come round to assess how far you are on the plan of executing your plan, you've realised that, oh, I'm sorry, boss, I've got this distraction, or this has come along, I've had to do this is urgent. Well, if you start to say to your team and yourself, look, the 4 Ds, can you do it? Should you do it? Does it align to the strategy? Can I delegate it? Can I give it to somebody else who's maybe not as aligned or has not got as much to do? Can I defer it? Can I say, I'll come back to you? I'm not going to do it now. I'm too busy. I'm doing this plan, but I'll come back to you in X time, or I can do it in this date. Or do you dump it all together? And that's obviously not dumping it without telling the person. You might go back and say, it's not important at the minute. Doesn't align to where we're going. I'm going to leave it. So that's all about sharpening your focus. The second point is build your competence. So you want to make sure when you're doing your building your competencies, how will we execute that strategy? Still got to be plain in your mind, but you've got to look at what skills you've got, what systems, what process, what tools do your team have, and what can they use to achieve the goals. And that's all about that competency. When you've got your team, you make sure you're building your team and you make sure that you're getting it together to deliver that one. If you think of your sporting analogy, these coaches will be getting a team together that they know will work well and know that they can deliver on the field or on the court or wherever sport it is. So they build a team around it, but they know that each of those teams will have their own strengths. So they'll want to maybe treasure that kind of talent. Make sure that you've developed that inside your team and you're trying to coach them to be able to execute the plan. You want to make sure that you've got that system in there that can repeat and do the work as well, but your people are going to be the biggest part of that. And of course, as a leader at this point, because you're trying to build their competencies, you also need to know what they're good at. So what is the role within that team? Do you have really strong team leaders? Do you have people who can really do the work and can get things done? Can you have some experts in there who can share the knowledge? Yourself, where do you get involved in that? And of course, in there is that idea of the beat of the project. So from a daily point of view, or a weekly, or whatever, you're going to revisit the project or get some feedback on how well the project is doing, is you want to look at having that system in place and make sure that all these people that are in your team that have got these competencies are all doing the right part at the right time. I've used sporting analogy, think of an orchestra. You've all sort of seen an orchestra playing. Each one of those instruments plays a part in bringing the music together, but each one of us a completely different instrument. So if you're thinking this competency part of executing your plan, you've got to make sure that you've got your violin and your trombone and your trumpet and your bass and your cymbals all working together, all got their part to play, and you're like the conductor. You're making sure it happens, even though you may have given some of that conductive power down to your team leaders who are doing it. But you've got the competency in that team leader to develop. And of course, you need to make sure that you're balancing everything in that team. Because if you get too many of one strength or too many people who've got this certain way of looking, then you've got, unfortunately, an unbalanced team. So although you need competency in this part of the model, you also need it to be balanced. And then the last part of it, when you're looking at executing your plan, is the idea of igniting the passion. So the passion creates that sense of connectivity. And it builds the connection between your teammates. It builds that human needs of doing something meaningful and connecting each other with that sense of value, sense of contribution. And by igniting the passion, you're answering the why question. Why are we executing that strategy? We know that how we can execute it because we've got the building the competencies. But really what you're going into that is, how can I really go for it and, get this team around to have passion? So as a leader, this is where you can be much more creative. You've got to start to paint that picture for them. You're connecting each of those jobs to the broader purpose. So in the second incident, we talked about building competencies. In this one, we're talking about, where are we going with those individuals? If they've got such strengths, how do we make sure that that picture they're painting, the music that they're playing in our orchestra is really delivering? So you, again, are pulling it together, looking at it, making it work for them. And you know, given what you know, you've got to be sort of out there and saying, sometimes you're going to be pulling things in, sometimes you're going to be pushing them out, but you're igniting the passion. And when you get some successes, you're going to be celebrating some wins. So you're going to be going out there saying, this has worked really well, well done. You know, you're going to be saying, this isn't going so well. Who needs support? This is the real joy of being in the charge of it. You've got to ignite the passion for the people to execute and get in there and deliver the results. And of course, in all this, you've got to have some metrics. So you will be measuring yourself against a certain set of metrics as you're going along. So, you know, as you have got your team together and you're working on the idea of sharpening the focus and building the competencies and igniting the passion, you got to remember there's got to be some tangibles in there. So you need to see some tangible results. It's not all about tangibles. Obviously, sometimes a team can be building very well and getting better, and there'll be times where it misses some targets and times when it doesn't quite hit. Not every team is functioning all the time. Sometimes the orchestra can be slightly out of tune. See what I'm doing with the music analogy? A lot easier than the sports one, isn't it, sometimes? But of course, at the end, the orchestra would have to come together and deliver on the night, and that's the same with your team. You've got to make sure that you've built a team around it. You've created that self-reinforcing cycle of success. That means that you can execute not just today, but tomorrow as well. So that's my ideas around how to execute a plan. Let me just step back and just give you a little bit of refresh what we talked about. Firstly, we talked about sharpening our focus. What do we need to do to execute that plan? Then you need to build the competencies. How will we execute the plan and who will execute the plan? We're going to explain to them how to do it. And the final part is igniting the passion. Why are we executing the plan? And if you do those things, you can start to see your team executing your plans day in, day out, and making sure that not just today's a win, but tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after. And that means you've got a successful team around you, making sure you're playing beautiful music and delivering the results you're there to do. Well, that's it for Manager Matt this week. Thank you so much for listening. As ever, I am open to feedback. So if you can please send me some feedback on what you think of the show, what can I do differently, any topics you want me to explore. Love to hear from you. It's managermattpodcast@gmail.com. And obviously, as I keep saying, feedback's a gift. So please, feel free to give me some feedback, if I can say it. But of course, whatever you've learned and listened today, it doesn't make any difference if you don't do anything with it, because words are cheap and actions drive results. So please put some of these actions into play tomorrow when you get to work, or even tonight when you're listening to this cast. Well, that's it for Manager Matt this week. Thanks for listening, and as always, goodbye.
Thank you so much for listening to this Manager Matt podcast. We hope you found it interesting, helpful and actionable. One last thing, please leave a quick review on iTunes or with your podcast provider, as it helps to spread the word of Manager Matt. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you did like anything in particular, send an email to managermattpodcast@gmail.com or visit managermatt.co.uk for more content. Feedback is a gift, so let's keep giving. See you next week.